Governor Ron DeSantis, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. You know, Governor, I have to ask you this question. You're very, very sharp, and you understand politics, among other things. For the life of me, why is Nikki Haley still running for the Republican nomination? Does she have some idea that she might get it or something?
I've never seen somebody run for a Republican nomination for any office, much less president, trying to do it by winning voters who aren't Republicans. They're in South Carolina urging core Democrats to come out and vote for her in the primary. It's just bizarre. And I noticed this in Iowa on the Iowa caucus night. Unfortunately, Iowa lets Democrats come. You can switch to Republican on the night of the caucus and then caucus. And I think the idea is maybe we're to draw more people into the party. However, I saw these Haley voters. They had N95 masks on. They had shirts with liberal slogans. These were liberal Democrats that were switching to vote to caucus for Haley. So it's just ridiculous. And like my thing on this is I never told anyone the whole time to get out, quote unquote. People can do what they want, but it's like the only real reason to run is if you have a path. And if you have a path, go all the way for sure. But she doesn't have a path. She's going to get killed in South Carolina by probably 30 points or more. And then she says she's going to keep going on. What? So she can lose Alabama by 60 on Super Tuesday? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's why I'm trying to figure this out.
Well, actually, Mark, come to think of it, I did see some articles about a lot of her money is now Biden donors that are contributing to her campaign. We know she had money from a very prominent Democrat in her super PAC, who the founder of LinkedIn, who's bankrolled every anti-Trump effort, including that lawsuit for the sex stuff in New York City. He funded that for the plaintiff. So she's getting money from there. So I do think some of the people giving her money are just hoping that they can get Trump to spend more money and then have less to take on Biden with in the general election. And, my kind of caution is just the Democrats have outraised us probably 10-1 so far. Yeah. The RNC is functionally bankrupt. The DNC in Biden's campaign, they're flush with cash, and they're only just starting. I mean, they're going to be able to raise a lot of money going forward, and that's true even if they do replace Biden at the convention, because they'll be able to just transfer the money. So we've got to start focusing on November here. I think we have a great opportunity as Republicans because I think the country's going in the wrong direction. Voters know that, and voters also know that Biden's just not up to this job given his mental decline. So we have a chance, I think, to put a lot of wins on the board, but we got to get our act together.
And I'm worried about that. When you have somebody like Nikki Haley, who is drawing what limited resources the Republican Party has, and I guess Trump, to defending him, and she's using Democrat Party and other elements to run against him, I'm saying, what the hell is she doing? I mean, do you think she's killing herself? I don't think she has any shot in 2028 now. She shot herself in both feet.
I don't know. I mean, I thought the whole time she was running for VP, and then I think, as she started to get elevated by the media, she got some of these big donors, and I think she thought she could actually win for a time. I do think she probably thought that, but it's just not the way the Republican Party works. You don't win a Republican nomination by appealing only to non-Republicans, and that was her strategy, and it was doomed to fail from the start. So South Carolina, I think, is going to be, and here's the thing, because I've been to South Carolina a couple times in the last week. I did a charity event that I had previously committed to. Then I worked with some of the legislators yesterday. I know you and I will talk about Article 5 amendments to the Constitution. So I'm working with legislatures around the country to reign in Washington because we do have the power. You wrote a book on that, so you know that better than anybody. And you don't even realize there's a race going on. It's like people have moved on from the primary. That's just the reality. And so, I think she's just spinning her wheels.
It's hard to take a loss. I got it. But at some point, you got to grow up and get over it. And obviously,
come on. These politicians, look, we ran for 6-7 months. We worked hard. We ran hard. And I didn't see a path, and so I moved on. And I was in the office the next day down here, and we've been doing all kinds of stuff the last few weeks down in Florida, putting points on the board. That's what you got to be in this, not for yourself, but to be able to bring results for the people that you represent. That's the only reason to run, to attain office, to do things. And then if you have an opportunity, you just got to do it. And so I don't know what she's doing. I think she's getting a lot of bad advice, but it is what it is. And, we'll manage one way or another. I just think that the Democrats, they've already placed $250 million worth of super PAC reservations, and they're likely going to double that. So they're going to end up, potentially outspending us, maybe 3-1 down the stretch. And I don't think that presidential elections, it's only about the money. I think there's more to it than that. But man, if people aren't even going to be able to get up and use the restroom without having some anti-Trump ad beamed into their phone or on their TV, eventually that does make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about this Article 5. I've believed in this a long time because the framers did. And Article 5, just for the public, it's two ways to amend the Constitution. One way is you wait around for Congress through supermajorities to make proposals. And that's how every amendment we have has worked. And then, of course, there's actually the more federalist way, which is amendments they actually come out from the bottom up. The states, they have a convention of states, not a constitutional convention. And you need 34 state legislatures to sign off. Now, we have 19 now, Governor. And those 19 have signed off on a set of proposals. Because the issue is the people who've read my book knows, and the people I talk to in the audience, you can't have states coming in with 25 different amendments because it's not going to work. It's not the way that was supposed to be done.
I think you outlined in your book a number of them, but I think some of them that are just no-brainers are term limits for members of Congress. The good thing about that is you need 38 states to ratify an amendment. And there are not 38 red states. There are 38 red and purple combined, and then we've probably got about 10 just loony left blue states. But even in blue states, some of these amendments will be popular. And so you called for that. You called for a balanced budget amendment, which we need, and you called for that when the debt was like $16 trillion or $17 trillion. Now it's doubled since you wrote that book in 2014 or 2015. I mean, it's incredible what these people have done. But one thing I was thinking about with your book, because you called for something that I think is important about a more specific definition of the Commerce Clause. The good thing that has happened with the current constitution of the court, I do think the Supreme Court could have potentially overruled some of those wrong decisions like Wickard versus Filbert.
Oh, yeah.
Justice Thomas has called on this. I know Alito and Gorsuch, and I think they probably could get a couple other justices. So it's possible that they could rectify their eminent domain decisions. I know you called for that because the court has expanded what public use is, and that needs to be restricted. But I think we have a chance to get some of this done through the court because we have at least a nominal 6-3 majority. But some of the other things like term limits, a balanced budget amendment, reining in the bureaucracy, this is good. And here's the thing. It's never been done, but the founders put it in there for a reason, because they understood that the federal ruling class may become a problem at some point. And if you only rely on Congress to initiate the amendment process, anything that has to do with the corruption of Congress and the associated departments of government will never get off the ground. So you have to have a mechanism where people in their individual states can propose amendments, debate the amendments, and you still need 3/4 of the states to ratify. So sometimes people say, "Oh, you can't use Article 5 because if they propose amendments, they could just create an entirely new constitution." Mark,
it's impossible.
What is the chance? Yeah, and what is the chance? First of all, and when you do the call to go, you can limit. You can tell the delegates you will commit an offense if you go outside whatever's there.
Right.
You can give the governor the power to recall them. So there are definitely ways to protect against that. But here's the thing. Worst case scenario, somehow someone proposes a Marxist constitution. Do you honestly think 38 states would ratify? Would any red state ratify repealing the Second Amendment, for example? Of course not. So I don't think it's a valid criticism, because if you accept that criticism, we have to basically accept that we're helpless to rein in the ruling class in D.C., and I don't think that's what the Founding Fathers intended. So you were, I think, ahead of the time on it, because when you called for it, it was right, but it's gotten so much worse now. So, in Florida, we've adopted, this call. I'm willing to work with other states for them to adopt this call. But these are really significant reforms and they're not just limited to what conservatives would want. There's broad appeal to this because there's independent voters. There's even some Democrat voters who know we need to restrain Congress's ability to plunge us into debt and limit their terms and so on down the line. So I'm a big believer in it. I think this is exactly what the Founding Fathers would be pushing for if they've seen how this government's been contorted over the years.
I just want to make an amendment since you brought up balanced budget amendment. I don't actually support a balanced budget amendment. I support what Milton Friedman proposed, which is limiting the size and growth of government to the gross domestic product. And I'll tell you why. A balanced budget amendment means I can raise taxes through the roof to balance our budget. We don't want that. So that's why I've never really jumped into that. What I've jumped into, though, is something I think is more effective. You cap the spending. You cap it constitutionally.
I think either way. I think obviously that would be great as well. I am not as concerned about them jacking up taxes because I think if they tried to do that, they get their asses voted out of office, and that's the thing. When these Democrats can put this on the credit card.
Let me just say something. If we're going to go through the mission, which is an extremely difficult one that I've been working on for 12 years, to have a convention. I do worry. I'm just saying from Mark's point of view, not everybody's point of view, that maybe 40, 50 years ago it sounded good. Reagan believed in it and others, a balanced budget. They are too slimy. They are too Marxist. And they'll say, fine, even we'll support a balanced budget amendment. And now this is what we need to do. And then they will raise the hell out of tax. They don't care if they're voted out, they're voted in, they'll change the voting system. And so these people are absolutely, I won't say evil, but they're pretty damn close. So that's Mark's view anyway, but go ahead.
And another issue is that they will probably would do an amendment that they would be able to evade at their convenience, and so that would be something also to watch out for as well. But look, I just think the issue is the founders understood we, the people, ultimately, the states created the federal government, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. You do not need the federal government to amend the Constitution. The founders believed in that. We need to rediscover that. And I could tell you this. Imagine if we got to like 30 states that certify. These guys in Washington, they would freak out. They would 100%. Be so scared. They'd be looking over their shoulder. Honestly, I think you'd see a change in behavior even at that point because they'd be so scared of what the people would do. So ultimately, they will fear. They fear the people when the people are organized and they're on a mission to rein this in. So I think you were right on the money. I think Florida's been great on this. We've certified this call many years ago, and we're all in for it. So if you're in one of these states that has not entertained Article 5 amendments to rein in Washington, tell your state legislators that you want to see this because we, the people, have the ability to change this country for the better.
And just to point out something I've told you myself, the Convention of States there's other groups too, but they have 5.5 million volunteers, and many of them are in this audience. And I thank them over and over and over again for what they're trying to do. They are engaged, they are citizens, they don't get paid, and they show up. When I go to a book signing and I have thousands of people show up, they're wearing their T-shirts. It's an amazing movement that's going on now. They're largely under the radar. Every now and then the left looks at it and they get very nervous. And, of course, they flip the script, Governor, which is we're trying to destroy the Constitution. Now, America's Governor DeSantis, the few minutes we have left, the McConnell Senate Republicans standing off against the constitutionalists. Schumer just wants to dismiss the impeachment of Mayorkas or to have a truncated, quick show trial and get it over with. We've never seen anything like this in American history on such a serious matter. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that they should have impeached him a lot earlier than this, quite frankly. This border had been open for 2 years while the Democrats were in the majority in the House. We won the majority in 22, albeit a narrow one. They should have moved immediately in the House. I'm glad they finally did it. Clearly, it's warranted. Impeachment's not just for committing criminal offenses, although there may be some here, but it's primarily about political crimes where you're violating your oath of office. And what Mayorkas has done by green green-lighting in over 7 million illegal aliens is a massive dereliction of duty. The U.S. Senate needs to process this, and all these guys need to go on record, make every Democrat vote to say that this is appropriate behavior for a cabinet official. I think some of them who are running for re-election, that's likely not going to be a very good vote. So they need to have a trial on it. I understand why some open border Republicans and liberal Democrats would not want a trial, because there'd be a lot of evidence about all the carnage that's happened as a result of the intentional open border.
I mean, honestly, Governor, the impeachment clause, high crimes and misdemeanor, with a good sense for what they meant from Madison's notes, and it goes back, they were looking also historically to the British, back to the 1300s, looking at the Parliament, how they handled impeachment, some of the language they adopted, some of it they didn't. If this isn't an impeachable offense, knowingly violating at least 6 sections of federal immigration law and the consequences of it, then what the hell point is there of impeachment?
I agree, and I think what's happened is what they're doing is something that is absolutely envisioned under the Constitution, and it's been done rarely in American history. But quite frankly, we haven't had cabinet secretaries who have been so brazen as to just completely ignore and violate the law until very recently. We worked back in the day on the IRS targeting scandal to impeach the IRS commissioner. Republican establishment stopped that from happening, but I thought that was an appropriate response for the targeting of conservative Americans under the Obama administration. This merits it, and I think the thing is it's easy. It should be easier to hold a cabinet secretary accountable because they're not elected. When you impeach a president, there is an issue of, okay, people voted all this stuff. Now, when they merit it, they merit it. But these cabinet secretaries, if you can't hold them accountable, then you're basically just saying people can get in there, take an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution, turn around and violate it with impunity.
We love having you on here, Governor. You're terrific. It's obviously you're a solid, principled conservative. And I want to thank you. My best to your wife, your whole family. God bless you.
God bless, Mark. Take care.